Hello viewers from wherever you're watching us from, you're watching QTV and this is your weekly State of Affairs program with me, Aliou Cisse, and thank you once again for joining the program. Well, as you all may know, State of Affairs is mostly about politics, but hey, this week we're looking into sports, and joining us to discuss, sports, especially football in particular, is the head coach of the Scorpions national football team, Jonathan McKinstry. Coach, thank you so much for being on the State of Affairs program.
No, thank you very much, Aliou. It was great to get the invite, and it's even better to be here.
First time, right, on this program?
Yeah, first time.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a different environment from what I'm used to, but I'm looking forward to it.
Let's take a reflection. When you were appointed as the head coach of the Gambia, what actually interested you in becoming the head coach of the Gambia in the first place?
Over the recent years, people who've been following football globally there's been ripples in the water, if you want, of something happening here in the Gambia in terms of football development. Obviously, the team had done very well in the recent two African Cup of Nations to qualify for the first time and then go again. But beyond that, the U20 World Cup performance a few years ago, obviously the U17s and the U20s have a great track record in the Youth African Cup of Nations, but the numbers of players moving from the Gambia to European football, to professional football, was growing steadily in the background. There was this almost explosion of football happening. Now, there's always been talent here, but to a degree it had been untapped. All of a sudden that well was being drilled into. And for me, you know, I've got a track record of not just working with successful teams, but also giving youth an opportunity. And if you look over the last 15 years of my work, it's been trademarked or hallmarked by young players stepping into that professional environment. So I just sort of thought, when I looked at the opportunity, I thought my skill set was suited for this moment in time with Gambian football. And it was an exciting opportunity and a great invitation to get to come and work with the team.
So since you take charge of the Scorpions, how will you describe the journey so far?
In many ways, it's been quite remarkable in terms of the speed at which things have happened. You know, when I came into the job, one of the big tasks was to change the playing identity of the team. Previously, while successful, the team had been quite a low block defensive unit, not creating many chances, but winning games or drawing games. I was asked to change that, to bring a more offensive, more intensive, more, I don't know, just exciting brand of football, if you want to call it that. And again, my teams in the past have showcased that to a degree. And that was the first thing. Can we change this level of football? It was also then about almost overseeing a transition. Obviously, the last two African Cup of Nations had been built on a group of players who were maybe aging out a little bit. Some of them are still around the team, but in the last 18 months, we've given 26 debuts. Now, I'd love to see how many teams in world football have given that many debuts in the last 18 months. So in that way, it's been remarkable. In terms of the goals we're scoring, it's been remarkable. In terms of just, because you've got to remember, international football, you have so little time with your players. We've probably only had 25 training days when you subtract all the matches. So in 25 training days, to have done a complete 180 on the playing style, but that's all down to the players because they've bought into it, they've been enthusiastic with it. But we also have to look on the other side of the coin. So there's been great advances, but there's also been frustrations. We didn't qualify for the last African Cup of Nations. We were, in essence, one goal away from doing so. But not going is not going. So that's a huge frustration for us. But all of the sort of signposts along the way are looking positive. And I think now, 18 months into the job, everybody that I work with and everybody that I speak to seems more positive about the future than they did 18 months ago when I walked through the door. So we're not at the destination yet. But I think the last 18 months have been really positive in terms of the direction we want to go in.
And talking about the direction, looking back at the recent qualifiers, like you mentioned, unfortunately, we didn't qualify. What moments actually stand out for you, as a turning point for you during the qualifiers?
I think,
especially for the team.
Yeah, I think, look, we've obviously been involved in two competitions, the African Cup of Nations, which is at this moment in time our primary concern, and the World Cup, which is a bit more further on down the line. You know, I think we're probably a few years, the 2030 World Cup is a realistic ambition, but maybe 2026 was always going to be a bit soon for this young group of players. In the African Cup of Nations, actually, all of our benchmarks, or most of them, we were really pleased with. We were creating a huge amount of chances. We were dominating games in ways that the team weren't previously dominating games. However, we weren't converting that that position in the games. We weren't converting that into goals scored and points on the board. But everything else, we were like, we just need small tweaks. We then came into the World Cup qualifiers in this calendar year, and all of a sudden things started clicking, and we were creating the same amount of chances as in the AFCON qualifiers, but now we were scoring the goals. And we finished the World Cup qualifiers as the highest goal scoring nation in Africa. So again, if you'd said that to any Gambian supporter 2 years ago, do you think the Gambia will be the highest goal scorers on the continent? I think that would have seemed a long way away. Now, there's still things we've got to fix. There's some defensive frailties we've got to work on. We're never finished the job, we're always working. But I definitely think now there was a transition period in terms of change of playing style, which was occurring during the African Cup qualifiers. Players had to get used to it. They were doing well, but maybe just weren't quite used to that type of football yet. And in the last 8-9 months, you can really see that they're comfortable in this playing style, and we're scoring goals, we're creating chances, we're winning games in a dominant fashion, home and away, or home I say in inverted commas. And so yeah, we're, like I said, we're only midway through the journey, but we're really pleased with the progress so far.
I know since your arrival, I mean, you've been following the domestic league as well. I mean, as a coach, I mean, what have been the biggest challenges in blending local and, of course, the professional players? I mean, you mentioned most of them, they don't have that time, to have enough time to spend with the team during international breaks and even, during active competition.
Well, I mentioned before, obviously, the last few years have seen this explosion of talent in the Gambia. What has come hand in hand with that is the number of scouts from professional clubs all over the world flying into Banjul. If you were to step on any flight from outside of the country coming here, I guarantee you there's 2, 3 or 4 football scouts on that flight. Gambia is the focus of European football at the moment in terms of where to find talent. What does that mean? It means the best of our young talent actually leave the Gambian league as soon as they turn 18. So you look at players like Yankuba Minte, the likes of Mamadou Baju, the likes of Ablaye Cisse. These players play for their clubs in the league when they're 16 and 17 years of age, which I think most people would agree is probably a bit young to play for the senior national team. But then when they're 18, they go to Europe. And so we now have close to 250 players playing professionally in European leagues. Now, I think we all have to also understand where the Gambian league is at the moment. Is the Gambian league as strong as the Danish league, as strong as the Swedish league, as strong as the Romanian league? No, it's not. And it's definitely not as strong as the Premier League or the Bundesliga or Serie A. So we are selecting our players almost exclusively from Europe. But that doesn't mean we're not looking at players here. But the nature of it is, every time I go to matches here and I take my notebook and I note down names, usually by the time the next camp comes around, they've already been signed to a European team. The likes of Ablaye Cisse, my first game in the Gambia, I noted him down. I said, there's a player to watch. A month later, he moved to Estonia. 6 months later, he moved to the Bundesliga in Germany. And so I think whilst we don't close the door on players playing domestically, Alaji Wali is a great example. He was in the June camp. But again, 2 weeks after that June camp, he signed professionally in the Ukrainian Premier League. So you see how quickly these players move. And really, given they're moving so young, what I would say to the players here in the Gambia is you really have to take seriously your opportunities at under 17, under 20 and Chan level, because that's where you can showcase your talent. If you're good enough, you'll always get your chance for the Scorpions. But the nature is, the more and more players we have playing professionally in Europe, the harder it is for a domestic player to move into that sort of stratosphere of the senior national team in the short term.
So I that coach that prefer, the professional players to the local base?
I prefer the best players. I prefer the best players. And ultimately, it doesn't matter where a player is playing or who he's playing for. You know, I think you look at the moment, our starting striker for the Scorpions is Adama Sidibe, who's playing in the second tier in Scotland. We have players playing at a higher level. Ablai Cisse is in the German Premier League. Ali So's in the Turkish Premier League. Adama Bojang is in the French second tier. These are all, you would say, higher quality leagues than the Scottish second tier. But Adama Sidibe is showing that he deserves to play. So we have to take level into account to a certain degree, but sometimes circumstances dictate where you're playing in the short term. And so if you're good enough, you'll get your opportunity.
So if you were to rate the Scorpions at the moment out of 10, what would be your rating?
It's a good question. I think in terms of our personal journey to where we want to go, we're probably around the 60% mark. So I know that's not answering your question. In terms of where we are right now, in terms of strength on the continent, I think we're probably maybe a 7 out of 10 in terms of strength, in terms of depth, in terms of experience. We got a huge amount of talent, but a lot of those boys only have played 5 or 6 games. When you look at teams like Egypt, like Nigeria, like South Africa, the majority of their team have played 20, 30, 40 times. So that has an impact. Where do I think we can be in the next 3-year cycle? We can be at a 9 out of 10 on the African continent. Really, I have no fear of any other nation on this continent for us to play against. If we play at our maximum, we can win any game. And I think you've seen that. We went and won in Tunis against Tunisia. We went to Ivory Coast, and yes, we lost 1-0, but their goalkeeper was man of the match, which tells you the flow of the game. So we don't have to be scared of any opponent. We can go toe-to-toe with the very best.
I know every coach, brings in his own philosophy in the way and manner you want that to fit into the squad. How has it been for you? Coming with that philosophy and trying to incorporate it into the style of play.
Well, I think for me, when I'm looking to take on opportunities, the first thing I want to know is their alignment in terms of how I think and feel about the game and how the organizations I'm going into aspire to play. Maybe it's the way they currently play and they want to continue that, or maybe they want to change and at their heart they want to play in a fashion that aligns with my sort of values within the game. So that was the first thing. Speaking with the GFF, speaking with the government here, it was very clear that there was a huge hunger to change the playing identity of the team to something very similar to the way I've always played with my teams. My first week on the job, I called every single one of our players who'd played over the last 2.5, 3 years. It was about 50, 55 phone calls. And I spoke to all of them for 10 or 15 minutes, introducing myself. But for the most of it, I let them talk. I said, how do you want the Scorpions to play? How do you individually want to fit into this team going forward? And what I got, and I've already used that phrase, but it got said so often on those phone calls, was, Coach, we want to go toe-to-toe with teams. We don't want to sit back and play in a manner...
Something that has always frustrated fans.
And so the players said, we want to go toe-to-toe. Now, if you look at my track record in football, if you want to use that term, I'm a toe-to-toe coach. I grew up in the 90s, supporting Kevin Keegan's Newcastle United. You remember that team of Les Ferdinand, David Ginola, Peter Beardsley? This was an attacking front foot team, and they were called the Entertainers. This is the team I fell in love with watching football growing up. And so that is at the core of who I am as a coach. I was jumping out of my seat watching Newcastle United in the 90s. I want Gambian supporters to be jumping out of their seat when they're watching the Scorpions. Now, there's going to be a few moments of heartbreak along the way, because if you want to play that type of football, there always will be moments of heartbreak. But I think we can accept that if we also achieve those incredible highs that can come with that type of football. So I think there was huge enthusiasm for what I was offering to bring. And I say to everybody, the starting point of a journey, if you're going to be successful, is enthusiasm. If you came to work every day and you weren't enthusiastic about it, how can you bring top performance? So we started with enthusiasm. We started with alignment in terms of the direction we want to go, from government, federation, players, me and my staff. And because of that, we've been able to make these great leaps forward. So, Yeah, it actually has been, I've been really pleasantly surprised at how fast we've moved. Because like I said at the beginning of the show, about 25 training sessions and we've done a complete 180 in terms of the style. That only happens if you've got buy-in.
So I can say from what you have said, I mean, you are one of those coaches who believe in that, the best way to defend is to attack.
I think that's a very on the surface way of describing it. Because for me, when people say defend, if I say the word to you defend and I ask you to step forward or backwards to represent the word defend, you would probably step backwards. Yeah? But defending can also be to suppress. Yeah. Defending, if I want to defend my house from burning down when a fire starts, I've got to smother the fire to stop it taking over. So that is a positive action to prevent something bad from happening. And that's the way I see defending. I see defending as a positive action in terms of if we step up to press, that's defending. We don't have the ball, we're pressing the opponents. And look, I started my first full-time job as a coach was with Red Bull. And when everyone thinks of the Red Bull franchise and the teams in Germany and Austria and New York, they think of a real proactive type of football. In the years that have followed since Red Bull sort of started sending coaches out into the world, you've seen Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool and Borussia Dortmund. You've seen how Napoli play. You see how Bielsa's teams play. Very front foot defending. So yes, I believe in attacking, but I also believe when we lose the ball, go get it back. Go get it back.
I mean, you mentioned, I mean, we all agree, Gambia, unlike many other countries, we are not fortunate enough to have that adequate funding, I mean, for our national teams. Certainly, we all know in the past, at some point, even the Federation will tend to finance, I mean, the activities of the senior Scorpions. Since your arrival, how has been the support from the Federation and, of course, government?
In terms of a practical outcome-based thing, I think it's been very good. So we've stayed in the best hotels that we can stay in. We've had the best training facilities. We have very good equipment available to us. Our kit and all of this is all at a very high level. I don't think, look, do we have everything? No, but we're not the Brazilian national team. We're not the Italian national team or the Egyptian national team. But if you compare us to every other national team on the African continent, I would definitely say we're in the top 15 or 20% in terms of the experience of the players and the staff when they come into the camp. Okay, so now that isn't a reflection wider because there's a lot of development things that have to go on in football in the country and everyone agrees with that. But in terms of the experience in a training camp, I think it's very good. I think the support's been very good. Now, I'm not the person who then has to go and find the money for all of these things. And ultimately, but I'm also not naive to know that at times there are shortfalls. But the one thing that I really like is that because everyone is so committed to the long-term development of this group of players, they find a way. They find a way to make it work. And, long may that continue, because at the moment we're seeing good progress. At the moment we're seeing, like I said, the facilities. We can't really ask for more on that side. So, I hope those people working in the background continue to do their magic and find a way to make it work, because, yeah, we're in a good moment, I think.
We hope it does, because at the end of the day, I mean, the national team is the responsibility of the government. I mean, you earlier mentioned about, I mean, we have a quite good number of people, professionals out there, and what are the qualities that you look out for when selecting, I mean, players for the national team? What do you look out for?
Well, like it's such a layered answer, really. Obviously, top talent, top quality. Are these people who can make a difference when they step on the field? Are they people who can, have a positive impact, whether that's offensively or defensively on the field? In line with that, do they fit in with this type of play that we're trying to do? Because maybe a player plays for a club that play in an ultra defensive, route one fashion. We only have 3 or 4 days with them when they come into camp before they've got to play a match. And so are we able to flick the switch for a player who plays the complete opposite type of football at their club into our style of football? That's some players the answer is yes. Some players the answer is no, because everyone has a different mental capacity and ability to transition. So do they suit the playing style? And then character and values are a big thing for us. You know, I talk to my players all the time about, one of my great sayings to my players is, if football's the only thing you've got going on in your life, you're doing it wrong. I want to know that they are good, hard-working people, that they have good values, that they are mentally tough, because you know, playing football is not easy. Playing international football is even more difficult. This is not an easy journey to play, you know, long distances away from your family, staying in hotels, you know, in different beds every few nights. You know, these are not easy. They don't align themselves to elite sporting performance necessarily. So you've got to have a certain mindset. So I would actually say probably everyone needs to be talented to play for the Scorpions, but if you don't have that character and mindset of, we are going to be successful no matter what, we refuse to lie down in the face of adversity, if you don't have that, I don't think you survive in any of my teams that I've ever coached. You need to have that proactive, we are going to find a way to do this mentality.
Have you ever been faced with a situation where you have players who are very arrogant, very indisciplined, who think, you know, they're above the coach, above the team? And how have you dealt with such a situation?
So, if we're talking career-wise, the answer is yes. If we're talking Scorpions, the answer is no, not yet. Okay. Which I'm very pleased about. But look, the nature of it is that everybody, you know, has the potential to try and test barriers, test where your lines are, you know, to push you a little bit. But for me, you know, I think people know this about me now. I'm very clear with what I say. You know, I don't like to leave ambiguity for anybody. So players are in no doubt of what the standards are, of what the expectations are. But also I'm a constant communicator. So if I see someone veering off course, I'm the first one to give them a tap on the shoulder and have a chat about them. And like I said, you can't separate football from the rest of your life. Maybe there is something going on in the background that they need a bit of support with to help them perform football-wise. And I think that dialogue helps us not have players who step out of line. But the coaches, I'm not a big shouter, but the coach's biggest disciplinary tool is the bench. If you don't want to fall in line, well, you're not going to play. And okay, if you're at a lower level of the game where maybe you've got a star player, let's say, who wants to be egotistical or put himself ahead of the team, you might find it more challenging to leave that player out. But again, if you look at my track record, I have done it on a number of occasions. Now, the great thing, like I said, with the Scorpions, I haven't encountered any of those characters yet. Everyone is team and nation focused when they put that red shirt on. But if we ever did encounter that individual, our depth of talent now is so much that actually we don't lose a lot when we change the team around. The last camp is a great example. You know, the starting lineup in our final game, we had the likes of Yankuba Minte and Musa Barrow on the bench, not just against the Seychelles, but in the previous window against Burundi. Now, historically, if you'd said to leave players of the caliber of Musa and Yankuba out of the team, you would think the team would struggle. But again, against Burundi, against Seychelles, we dominated both games without these players. And
many were questioning, why is the coach putting Barrow and Yankuba on the bench?
But the reason is because we have confidence in the other players. And ultimately, I also think human nature is, if you are working hard, you need to see that your hard work will get you opportunity. The players, look, none of the players are naive. They know that there is a quality difference within the squad. But it is maybe not so great. It's maybe only 5-10% between players in their respective positions. So they know that if they step out, you know, look at that game against Burundi. We asked Musa and Yankuba to step out, but we played Bambalai and we played Aliou Fadera. You cannot say either of these players are poor players. They are top class players. And so, but isn't that great? Because regardless of how good a coach I might be, competition is the greatest coach, because if you know that there's 2 or 3 other guys who are vying and working for your position in the team, you know you can't rest. You got to keep working. You've got to have your levels high all the time. Otherwise, you'll find yourself out of the team, and everyone understands this.
So you're talking about, you know, competition within the team, but in terms of unity, how much is the team, I mean, in terms of unity at the moment? Because we have seen in the past where, I mean, there's that division within the national team. You have different camps and all those stuff's happening.
I think the unity is very good. There's different characters within the team, there's no doubt. There's different age groups within the team. Do I expect a 31, 32-year-old to spend all of their time off the pitch with the 19-year-old? No, I don't. But equally, they work together well. There are a lot of friends in the team. Okay, so first of all, there are a lot of friends, but also everyone is friendly and respectful of each other. And I think part of the reason for that is we have achieved a level of real equity within the team. Is that there are no, I think the saying is, there's no sacred cows in the team. Yeah. So we have shown that anyone can be left out of the team, and that anyone can come in and have a top performance. And I think when we show that, and when I have that honest relationship with the players about why I'm making certain decisions, they might not agree with my decisions all the time. I don't expect that. I don't ask for that. But what I do ask for is them to respect their teammates, that every person who gets called into that squad has the ability to be a starting 11 player. And they all recognize that. And so when you have equity, when you see that people work hard and they get what they deserve by their opportunity, I think people, whilst they might want to be in the team, they also respect the situation. So the atmosphere amongst the group is very good. Like I've been in the professional game for about 15 years now, and it really is, you know, this group of players is probably one of, if not the best, in terms of team bonding.
Have you ever been faced with a situation where you are in a dilemma as to who should be on the bench and who should start?
Yes. Yes.
How do you handle that?
And that, well, ultimately, I discuss it with my staff. You know, my staff all get a voice, and if you ask them, you know, I'm a great believer that the leader or the captain or the coach, whatever you want to call the person at the head of the table, that they should speak last. You know, because if you speak first, you might color the water, you might influence other people's opinions. So, you know, I ask my staff for their opinion before I speak, and they know they can give it honestly. They also know that my expectation is they need to argue for their opinion. They need to give logical rationale for it. And actually their job as coaching staff is to convince me that I'm wrong. And the best coaches I've had in my career are the ones who have been able to convince me to change my team, not through the force of how they're saying it, but through the logic of what they're saying. And so, you know, I talk to the team. I ultimately, you know, I go with my gut feeling a bit as well sometimes. Sometimes it really is a 50-50 call. And sometimes you don't know where it's coming from. You've looked at it from every angle, but something at the pit of your stomach from all of the experience I've got in the game. You know, I was talking to some of our C license coaches yesterday, actually. They're doing their C license course, and they were asking me about sort of my journey and how they want to do something similar. And I said, look, you remember, I did my first coaching session 24 years ago. And so that was kids, that was 6-year-olds. But 24 years of coaching at every level of the game, I have a feeling for the game. And so sometimes when it is such a close call, I go with my gut feeling. But ultimately, if it's such a close call, I sort of also have the relaxed nature that neither option is wrong. You know what I mean? If players are performing to such a high level that I'm not 100% certain A or B, probably either option will do okay. And that again is a great testament to the talent we have here in the Gambia, that I can go 2 or 3 or 4 players deep on the roster in any position, and I still find myself of a really good footballer.
What is that game during the qualifiers that actually kept you awake at night thinking about the game and saying, tomorrow we are facing this particular team?
I don't think that ever happens, not anymore. It maybe happened years ago, but for me, we do so much research into our opponents. We know our opponents inside and out. Sometimes actually it's the smaller teams whose players are not playing at the big stage can be a little bit trickier to get your game plan ready for, because maybe there's not as much video of their players. But you know, if we're playing Tunisia or the Ivory Coast, obviously all of their players are playing in the Champions League, the Bundesliga, the Premier League, so we get to watch 50 hours of video if you want. Yeah.
And Kenya, where you were.
Well,
so
Kenya and
videos.
Well, and Kenya exactly was a team that I knew inside out. Like half of the team that played against us used to play for me, so I knew them. Like I saw substitutes coming on, and I was telling our players, "Hey, this player likes to do A, B, and C. Make sure you stop it."
How was that feeling? I mean, playing against Kenya. Knowing for that you've coached most of those players, it was more like a home return for you.
Yeah, but look, I've played against former teams before. Yeah. You know, it's happened a few times in my life. I'm very fortunate that I've maintained great relationships with pretty much everyone I've ever worked with.
Which is important.
You know, and I think that goes to a testament to the type of work we're trying to do and the respect we show everybody as we try to achieve something. But yeah, Kenya was, look, it's obviously my most recent posting before coming to the Gambia. Obviously, my last day of work in Nairobi was lifting the league championship, and then I got on a flight to come to the Gambia. So there was a lot of positive memories there. But again, you go there and it was nice to be welcomed in the way that I was welcomed. But what was more important was my connections in Kenya meant that we were able to run a 5-star training camp because I knew what training ground to use. I knew what hotel to go to. I knew what bus company to contact who would be on time. So that little bit of background knowledge that I had helped us run a better camp, and I think had an impact on the performance when we played against Kenya. Yeah.
And behind the scenes, I know a lot happened behind the scene that perhaps the fans and many others wouldn't know, that, you know, these are things that happen behind the scene. How will you describe, I mean, most of the behind the scenes ahead of the game in terms of, you know, building that team spirit and motivation, I mean, in the camp?
Yeah, it's a lot of repeat messaging. You know, we're very clear with our players. I think clarity is really important in everybody's job, especially when you're limited for time. And so, you know, early days, especially in the early games, we really anchored in terms of what our expectations were with the players. And then in the last number of windows, players come in, the first couple of days of training tend to be revision. It's like you're a student in school. You've been away for the summer holidays. Your first week back, you're revising what you did in the last term. So first couple of sessions tend to be revision of things they already know, get them back into scorpion mindset. And then the 1 or 2 sessions before the actual game, we maybe try to add 1 or 2 things, both in terms of our game model, our game philosophy to take it another step forward, but also if there's any real special thing they need to know about the opponent. We also rely a lot on video. You know, before the players even step foot in the country we're playing in, they've already received, like, it's usually a 10 or 12 minute video which has game clips of us, of opponents. It has what we're going to be looking at in training. It's got the objectives and goals for the week. So they're all sent it, told to download it onto their phone or their tablet, so that when they step on that airplane, they can watch it, and then they step into camp and they already know what's expected of them as a team and of them as an individual in the next 4 or 5 days. So again, we're layering in information even before we go out to training. We go into the video room for 10 minutes just before we go training. We show them a couple of clips of them doing things, a couple of clips of why we need them to focus on that today. And we even show them clips of the actual training drills that we're about to do. So that again, clarity, understanding, and because they have that before they even step on the grass, now it means the tempo of the training is of a higher level because we don't have to stand around explaining things out on the pitch. And again, that transfers into match day because when that whistle goes, we're looking for tempo, we're looking for intensity, we're looking for positivity. And yeah, so it's all layered in. It's quick and sharp messages that are repeated often in different scenarios so that and also players are given the opportunity to ask questions. You know, we want to make sure clarity is the most important thing. If you kick off the game and you've still got questions in your head about what am I supposed to be doing here, then we've got a problem. But if you are really clear, what's expected of me? How do I help my team win? Then I think we've got a really good chance of success.
And like you said, I mean, throughout the qualifiers, we've been playing our home games away from home, and sadly and embarrassingly for the past 5 years, that has been the case for Gambians, and disappointingly for the fans as well, and even the players. I mean, as a coach, how soon will you like to see the Scorpion finally start playing home?
Tomorrow, if it's possible. Look, I think there is nobody who is happy about the situation. And I don't just even talk about, us within the team. I think you can say the federation. I think you wouldn't, if you asked anyone within government or within the supporters, everybody, it's a global answer, would say we are unhappy that we're not playing at home. For us, as the national team, there's nothing we can do about that. We know it affects our results because if you look over the last 18 months, we've picked up more points in our away games than we have in our home games. That's not how football works. You always pick up more points at home. Why is that? Our away games, even though it's been in front of away fans, have been in front of capacity crowds. And we've played the energy the players have used, playing in empty stadiums we played against, we beat Burundi 2-0, but that kicked off at 10 p.m. at night in Kenya. You can imagine the human body and mind, empty stadium, you should be at home. You're on the other side of the continent, 10 p.m. at night, because that's when they can fit you in. And this has an impact, and it has an impact on our tempo. So we would love to be playing at home tomorrow, but on the same side, we're using the silver lining from it. Because one of the things we've said to our players is, during this time, can we make sure we become experts at playing away? Can we become the best away team in Africa? In the 18 months I've been in, we've collected over 60% of the points available in our away games. If any team is picking up that many points away from home, they're winning the Premier League, they're winning the Bundesliga. So now, when we finally do get home, can we also maintain that away form? And then we're going to be unstoppable. So we got to take the silver lining from it as well as a learning tool.
Interesting. And I know for any sport to develop, especially football, which is the most followed sport in the country here, I mean, the media has a huge role to play. How will you assess the role of the media, especially your relationship with the media, particularly sports journalists?
Well, look, I think ultimately the media globally are the vehicle of which information gets shared to the players, or not the players, sorry, the fans. Yeah. And so we want as open a relationship as possible. And I think one of the things I've always tried to do is try and be very considerate of the media, very open with the media. I think maybe a lot of people saw even a few days ago we had sort of like a coffee evening literally that was 2 hours together. Now, I don't know how many coaches spend 2 hours with a room full of journalists answering any question that gets asked. We don't dodge any question. They might not like my answer. They might want a different answer, but I will give them the truth as I understand it, and then they can disseminate that information. I think that's really important so that the supporters know what's going on. But also, my view of it is, if we don't have that open relationship with the media, then what happens in the modern world when there is a void? People will speculate. And even, you also know, unfortunately, there are some very good journalists in the world, but there's also some who are not so maybe ethical.
It's the case everywhere.
It's all over the world.
All over the world.
And you know, we're now in an era of fake news. We're in an era of malicious media. And so if we don't give information, then someone who wants, for whatever reason, to write something that's maybe not true, if that's the only thing that's there, then people will believe that that is the truth. So I think for me, having that open relationship, but for me, my relationship with the media is an extension of what I'm trying to build as my relationship with the fans. Because for me, the most important stakeholder in football all over the world is the supporters. The game, we saw this during COVID when we had empty stadiums. Exactly. We felt it now having to play away from home for so long. But without supporters, there's moments, I'll be honest with you, when there's no supporters, all of us in the professional game have moments where we think, why are we here doing this? Who are we playing? Who are we playing for? And so the supporters have to be at the heart of everything we do. And so that's why we're so hungry to get back here to playing in Banjul, because we know the supporters are going to make, one heck of an atmosphere, when we do get to play at home. And they'll not just be our 12th man, they'll be our 13th, 14th and 15th man, I feel. But in in that interim period, can we provide as much information as possible? And even when we are at home, we'll continue, because information, I think, brings people on board as part of the journey, and we all, you've heard me say it before, we got to go forward together.
And to be honest, it's a good initiative, and we have to commend you and, of course, the Director of Communication, Babukar Kamara, for actually coming up with this initiative. It's good that you bridge that gap between you and the media, and of course, we have to commend our President of the Sports Journalist, Umar Jaju. Yeah. The international break is coming up. Many a times people will complain, oh, there's an international break and there's no friendly for the Scorpions. Is there anything happening this coming break?
Yeah, so we're heading off in a couple of days' time. We're gathering in Cairo to play an international friendly against Kuwait, who are an Asian nation. So obviously from the Middle East. Kuwait, they're ranked, I believe, about 7 places below us. So we're quite close in the rankings. And so it's going to be an interesting game. There was a few different reasons for choosing it. Like everyone's aware, the GFF have been very open about it. One of them was financial. The Kuwaitis, they're also playing Tanzania in the window, and they were willing to cover, a certain number of the costs, air tickets, hotels and stuff, which made it, we had a few different offers, but some of the offers that required us to make significant investment were just not ones at this moment in time we could realistically consider. But when I came into the job, the government and the executive said to me, they gave me their assurance that we would utilize every international window. And last June, we had no competitive games. We played 2 friendlies in Egypt. This November, again, no competitive games. And even though we're maybe in a little moment where we need to be careful of cash flow, we found a way to bring a camp together, and that's going to be incredibly valuable, not just for the player experience to give some of our young players more exposure in the international arena, but also for our FIFA ranking. Because if we want to move as high up the world rankings as possible and be in the best possible pot when the next AFCON draw happens in the summer, we got to keep playing, because if you don't play, you'll tumble down that ranking. And look, when I took the job, we were a 4th pot team out of 4. That makes your journey to the finals a little bit more tricky. If the draw was made today, because of our results in the last 18 months, we would be a 3rd seeded team. We have a chance, if the next 6 months go well, that we could be a 2nd seeded team. We've got to do well, but there's a chance. But our target is, can we at minimum be a 3rd seed, which would be better than the last time? And if possible, can we get up to 2nd? So playing the friendly has huge impact.
And I've seen the squad that you invited. There are some notable absentees, like Mente, Barrow, and a couple of other players. Why is that the case?
Well, obviously, unfortunately, Musa Barrow picked up a serious knee injury, so he's had surgery last week, and I think everyone would join me in wishing him a speedy recovery. I do think it's going to be a few months that he's going to be out, which is, really unfortunate for him first and foremost, because he's in great form. This season, in the last 18 months, really, Musa's been in such fantastic form. Yankuba was just a player that, look, we know what we get from Yankuba. Yankuba has started, I think, all but 2 of the games. Didn't start against Seychelles or Burundi, but he started in all the other games for me. I think he scored 6 or 7 goals, got 3 or 4 assists. I know what I get from Yankuba Minte. But someone like Moussa Jawara, who's been out of the squad a little bit recently, but even last month got Player of the Month over in Poland, he's been working really hard. Last season he was at a club where he wasn't playing regularly. He transferred to a good club, a good league in Poland. He's now playing regularly, he's performing, and he deserves his chance. So I spoke about equity in the national team. So for players like him, for players like Jibril Silla, for players like Able Mane, who scored a hat-trick the last time out, these guys also deserve their chance, because we just spoke about Musa getting an injury. Any player can get injured at any time. And if we only use the same 11 players every time, then we cannot complain if the replacements don't have the experience. But if we rotate when we can, if we give exposure and experience when we can, I think in the medium to long term, we're going to be a lot stronger for it.
So, Coach, what's your, long-term vision for Gambian football, not just for the Scorpions, but even when it comes to youth development?
Yeah, look, for me, a big part of my view on the game is, look, my number one job is to win football matches for the Scorpions. I'm not naive. If you don't win football matches, you won't be in a head coaching position for very long. But beyond that, however long I'm here, 5, 6, 10 years, I don't know, however long I'm here, if the only thing I've done at the end of that time is win football matches, I'll be a bit disappointed in myself. I think there's a part of my role is to grow the game, there's a saying, plant seeds under which trees you'll never sit. You know, I want to look back at Gambian football in 30 or 40 years' time and say I played a part in the growth that it has seen over the next few decades. You know, one of my role models is Roy Hodgson, and if you look at Roy Hodgson's reputation in Sweden, where he coached early in his career, he put in place a lot of the systems and processes. Even though he was a head coach, he was involved in a lot of things that the game grew. And so for me, I want to do that. You know, even yesterday I was having coffee with our U17 national team coach. Today I was chatting with our U20 national team coach. Earlier in the year I sat down with, you know, our technical director and some other members of the federation, and we started mapping out a football development strategy that links the game style at the Scorpions level all the way down to 10, 11 years old. Now, this is in its early development stages. It might be another 18 months before we see this document pushed out into the world. But for me, can we support coach development? Can we support player development? Can we ensure there are clear pathways for players to move up through the national teams through a unified playing style? So that, look, if a 19-year-old steps into the Scorpions environment, it's not a different playing model from the U20s. It's the same playing style, so they at least feel a little bit comfortable. Because trust me, an 18, 19-year-old stepping onto the training field with Omar Colley, you know, Yankuba, Ali So, it's nerve-wracking enough for that kid. He also then doesn't need the stress of not knowing the system we're playing. So if we can have that clear flow through the levels, and yeah, it's step by step. That's not an overnight process to put that in place. And I'm not the only person who's doing that. There's a lot of people working hard behind the scenes on it. So, but yeah, we're trying to plant some seeds and grow some big trees.
But one will say behind all this infrastructure comes to mind. How will you rate the current state of our sport infrastructure in the country?
I think it's fair to say it's poor. I think, you know, we don't have the facilities in this country. We need to develop more. In my time alone, we have seen more investment. I was down yesterday, actually. I spent some time with Fortune FC and with Munich Global yesterday morning, and obviously they were training on a artificial pitch that the former player Zico helped set up. It's good to see that. I know, for example, Real de Banjul are doing big investments. I know Gambia Dutch Lions have built a new facility out there. I know Hearts obviously played a nice facility. Hawks, I've been to theirs, a nice facility as well. So we're getting the private sector starting to get involved, which is really good. And I think Gambinos is another one as a youth academy. So external clubs from all over the world are starting to partner and invest here. Obviously, we've got the Goal Project, which I believe we got sign off for another field to be sort of ground hasn't been broken yet, but there'll be another field going in there. So look, again, it's not an overnight process. I know people would like to think you can click your fingers and do this, but money does not grow on trees. You know, it is expensive to put an artificial pitch down, costs the best part of $500,000. It's not an overnight process to do these things.
And that's why it's important that, you know, the little that you get, you also manage it well and make sure it is put into the rightful places.
Yeah.
Okay. But I mean, when you look at the current state of our infrastructure, like you admitted, it is not us. We all would love to see. Does this serve as an inspiration for you, or it kind of frustrates you?
No, it's an inspiration, I think, because one of the things, well, first of all, I'm the type of person who always looks at something and sees how it can be. I look at the potential of what we can put there. Blank canvases are great things because you can create anything you want on a blank canvas. You don't have to tear up what was there before. And so in that sense, we've got a great opportunity to put down really good infrastructure going forward. And like I said, there's some people working really hard, private entities, people within government, people within the federation working really hard to make sure that happens. But the other thing is, when I go all around Europe and I speak to clubs that we have players at, the same thing gets gets said to me in every country, from Germany to England to Romania to Italy. Every sporting director says to me, the mindset of Gambian players is something they don't get from anywhere else. They've got young Nigerian players, young, Kenyan players, young Ivorian players. And when they come in at 18, they need 6, 12, 18 months to settle in the B team before they push into the A team. Whereas they say more often than not, an 18, 19-year-old Gambian arrives direct from the Gambia to Sweden, to Italy, wherever it happens to be, and they're at a stage mentally where they can go straight into the team. Now, where does that mentality comes from? It comes from the communities they're growing up in. It comes from the challenges they've had to overcome. So yes, we want to put good infrastructure in place and good facilities, but we've got to make sure we don't pave over the thing that makes Gambian football great, which is the fortitude, the mindset, the mental toughness, the never say die attitude. And the best example, I used to work in the United States of America for a while. Every young player in the United States of America from the age of 5 years old is training on an artificial pitch, on a 5G pitch. They have the best facilities in the world. How many United States of America players do you see at the top of the game? You don't see them. And so they lack something, not on a physical or a technical level, but on a mental level, in my opinion.
So what message will you like to send to the fans who always believe in the Scorpions, even during tough times?
I would say your role in our long-term success is huge. It really is. And we have been hugely thankful, even when we've been playing away from home, the Gambian community all around the African continent have come out to support us. When we were in Kenya, there was maybe 50 or 60 Gambians there, and they sounded like a few thousand Gambians in the stadium when we scored. So we understand the passion and the heart that the Gambian football fraternity has for this team. The players know it, even though we're not in the stadium every other month. But what I would say is get ready, because when we come back, and we hope that's sooner rather than later, we truly believe, and when we do come back, the Gambian football fans are going to have a huge part to play, not just in us going back to AFCON, but I said to you earlier in the show, we believe that the 2030 World Cup is a realistic possibility. I'm not saying it's a certainty. There's a lot of hard work has to go in to qualify for a World Cup. But I think you see Cape Verde, I think you see some of the other nations who've done so well this one. It is, with this group of players, in 4 years' time, it is a possibility, and the supporters are going to play a big, big part in that.
I know we're running out of time, but Coach, just quickly, I mean, we are going to end this interview on a lighter note. I mean, what's your favorite Gambian dish?
Do you know, and I'm going to cause a little bit of controversy here, I'm a big jollof rice fan.
Okay.
But I also lived in Sierra Leone for a long time.
Oh.
So I've yet to find a jollof rice here in the Gambia that's better than the one I had in Freetown. And I apologize to Ablai sitting over there, because his wife made me a very nice one, but it was maybe only 98% of the way towards the ones I had in Freetown. But yeah, I'm a big jollof rice fan. I'm also a big fan of fresh fish.
Oh,
really? So here on the coast, the barracuda, all of this, I love it. So, the food here in the Gambia, maybe a little bit too much oil at times for my liking. But
who's the funniest player in the team?
The funniest player, Badamosi. He's properly Mohamed Badamosi.
One word to describe the Scorpion spirit?
Positive.
Who inspires you most in both football and life?
There was an old basketball coach called John Wooden, an American basketball coach.
If you weren't a coach, what will you be doing today?
Helping people become better. I think that's my calling in life, is to help people be better tomorrow than they were yesterday. I just happen to be lucky that I get to do that in a sport that I love.
Thank you so much, Jonathan McKinstry, who is the head coach of the senior national Scorpion. He was my guest on the program today. Coach, thank you so much for being on the program. I quite appreciate your time, and a special thanks to Mr. Babkar Kamara, Director of Communication, for actually facilitating this interview, and to the President of the Gambia Football Federation, Lamin Kababajo. Happy belated birthday on behalf of the production team and everyone here at QTV. Thank you so much for watching. Do join us next week. Until then, continue supporting national team. Bye-bye.